President Donald Trump had made statements. He said that Israel had accepted the conditions for a 60-day ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. It was expected what Hamas would say. Hamas announced that they were studying the proposal. This statement came from Hamas. What is the latest on Gaza ceasefire efforts? Hamas, other explanations?
Let me tell you right away, now we are probably seeing positive messages coming from both sides. So, especially the Israeli press is commenting and evaluating that we are really close to a ceasefire. When we look at the developments reflected in the Arab press, we see that there are also positive developments. Now Hamas has received the offer. As you said, Hamas is expected to give a response probably on Friday. After they give that response, basically after they accept this framework of a temporary 60-day ceasefire, then they will be able to discuss it again either in Doha or Sinai. Indirect negotiations between Israel and Hamas are expected to start in Egypt, and the details are expected to be determined. Now, the critical process ahead of us here is that on Monday, Netanyahu will go to the White House. He will meet with Donald Trump, and the general expectation there is as follows. Trump, of course, wants to announce that Hamas has accepted the offer and that a ceasefire agreement has been reached. So all eyes will be on the White House on Monday. Now we need to look at the details of the agreement. What we said is that we are talking about a 60-day temporary ceasefire. During this time, Hamas will release some hostages. It is expected to return 8 hostages on the first day, 2 hostages on the 50th day, and the body of the hostage who died on the 18th day. Here you can see the reason why Hamas did not want to hand over all the hostages on the first day is the same reason we explained yesterday. Netanyahu stepped back, broke the ceasefire, and started attacks again. Now, the clearest information that we have learned from what is in the press is actually this. Hamas is saying there will be a 60-day temporary ceasefire, yes, but during this ceasefire, let us continue negotiations so that we can reach a result that will lead to a lasting peace. We can reach. And this is what Hamas demanded from the United States. It was reported in the press yesterday. Within the 60-day period, we may not be able to complete the negotiations. If that happens, let this period be extended. Let the negotiations continue. It is said that the U.S. also intends to provide guarantees in this direction, so Hamas is also positive to the proposal. So here is the point that we are wondering how it will be resolved. When we look at what Hamas has been demanding from the very beginning, it is important that Israeli troops withdraw from the gas zone. Hamas wants the distribution of humanitarian aid to be out of Israel's hands again. This is important. Of course, we do not yet know what kind of concessions Israel will make and what the details of the agreement will be. But yesterday, there were some remarkable statements coming from the Israeli side. Now, as you know, Netanyahu actually changed his rhetoric a little bit after this 12th day war with Iran. And he changed from saying how long he will fight instead of completely replacing Hamas to saying that we will ensure the return of the hostages. And of course, when this gets a lot of attention in the Israeli press, what happens when Netanyahu moves towards some kind of ceasefire agreement like this? The reaction from the extreme hardliner ministers with Israel.
Ben-Gvir's already reacting directly. Exactly. But I mean, how reliable is Netanyahu's word?
Now that there is a reaction from the extremist ministers, Netanyahu is also making statements to appease that front a little bit. Yesterday, we witnessed Netanyahu saying, there will be no more Hamas in Gaza. There will be no more Hamas in Gaza. It will not return. It is over. In another meeting, he is even quoted as saying that Hamas will not be able to stay in Gaza while I am alive. On the other hand, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said that we have 2 goals: to bring back the hostages and to make sure that Hamas no longer exists here. And he said we have not given up on that. So on the one hand, Netanyahu has now accepted a proposal for a ceasefire. And on the other hand, there will be no more Hamas in Gaza. Continues its rhetoric. Here, let us underline this. What is Hamas insistently saying? This should lead to a lasting peace. Of course, there are different demands from the parties here. How will the process work at that point? I mean, At the end of that 60-day ceasefire, will there really be a result that will lead to a lasting peace? Time will tell. The latest statement from the United States, which came from the State Department yesterday, says that an agreement with elements that everyone accepts will happen. He says there will be such an agreement. So let's see. For now, Hamas seems to be satisfied with the American guarantees. Its acceptance of the offer is being approached positively. Of course, let's also say that we are talking about a war that has been going on for 20 months. Israel has said from the beginning that I will completely defeat Hamas. This is my goal. But in fact, it has not achieved its goal in any war. In other words, it has not yet defeated Hamas both politically and militarily. Therefore, Netanyahu, too, continues to make such different statements in his own domestic public opinion as he is backed into a corner.